you've hit a button and you haven't, and you've been talking to an empty room for 15 minutes. Oops. Welcome everybody to Proverb each day. Um, I I think what I'll do is I will probably reserve my thoughts that I was sharing to an empty room uh, to the end of today's episode. Let's just do it that way. Um, so what I'm going to do here is um, get myself organized here. I've actually got the wrong screen up on my end here, so give me just a moment here. There we go. All right. Do this real quick and I'll come back right back with you. All right. Welcome everyone to Proverb each day. We're going through Proverbs 6 today, as it is the sixth. And at the end of today's episode, we will talk more about a thing that happened over the weekend, or actually yesterday, and some ongoing reactions to Intel's CEO using a proverb uh, during his announcement of a bunch of layoffs and well, look at some of my thoughts on that. But first, let's actually do what we should have done in the first place, and let's actually have a moment of prayer here. So, Father God, thank you for today. Thank you for your gifts of wisdom to us. I ask that the words that are on the page, the words that are spoken by me, especially, are transformed magically into wisdom by your Spirit. Let those words, whatever they are said, let them be heard as wisdom that is beneficial to my life and to everyone else's life that's watching as well. Father, I do ask that in your Son's name. Amen. All right, let's dive into this. We're reading from the Message translation. Like a deer from the hunter. Dear friend, if you've gone into hock with your neighbor or locked yourself into a deal with a stranger, if you've impulsively promised the shirt off your back and now find yourself shivering out in the cold, friend, don't waste a minute. Get yourself out of that mess. You're in that man's clutches. Go put on a long face, act desperate, don't procrastinate. There's no time to lose. Run like a deer from the hunter, fly like a bird from the trapper. There's a lot of different translations of this whole concept of locking yourself into a deal with a stranger or a foreigner. Um, that Yeah, it's just it sounds weird for us today that we deal with like international commerce all the time. I can personally tell you that a lot of the people that read my books are at least 30 to 40% or more are not here in the United States. Um, Now all of the well, I shouldn't say it that way. I was about to say that most of my speaking engagements have been in the US, but thanks to the virtual world we're living in, that's not necessarily true. I have actually done some speaking events virtually outside of the country, so there's that too. But yeah, it is a thing, right? So we're used to that. Um, Now there's a notion here that the a stranger would not have the same rules, or a foreigner would not have the same rules as you would, and that's true. That is actually something that is actually true today. That we do have some international regulations that might be different in one country um, than yours, and there's some countries that I don't do business with at all, that I block from having any exposure to me. Actually, Russia, for example, is a country that I have been blocking for some time now, and just because that's just not wise for me to be doing business with people that might be perfectly willing to steal what I have and sell it on their own or things like that. There's no protections of that kind of thing over there. So some of it just happens inevitably. There is some of that theft going on with me in India right now. Ultimately, I just have to let it go and just not be okay with it, but at the same time be mindful that sometimes it does happen. And so when it comes to the bigger part of my business, that can't be stolen because that's mine. That's me. Access to me is the bigger part of the business, so it's not that big of a deal in the long run. But it is something I have to be aware of. And this is if you've um, made an impulsive decision to work with someone that you don't know and don't trust, or is something that's under a different set of rules than you are, it might be another way to say this. That's what this is uh, cautioning against. But anyway, let's get into Proverbs 6 or chapter the verses 6 through 11 here, because this is actually some of my favorite passages, and it's always fascinating to read these in different translations. Lesson from the ant. You lazy fool, look at an ant. Watch it closely. Let it teach you a thing or two. Nobody has to tell it what to do. All summer, it stores up food. At harvest, it stockpiles provisions. So, how long are you going to be lazy around the house and doing nothing? How long are you going to laze around doing nothing? Interesting. How long before you get out of bed? A nap here, a nap there, a day off here, a day off there. Sit back, take it easy. You know what comes next? Just this. You can look forward to a dirt poor life. Poverty, your permanent house guest. Yeah. Um, there's a lot here. So with that, so as far as what this is saying about an ant, um, it, the perspective is that ants are hardworking. Is basically what we're getting at here. Is that there's a level of willingness to work that is noted here, but also there's a proactiveness here that it's not about like the hustle. It's not about like working as hard as you can every single day. It's more having an even keel, and knowing that your patterns are what's important here. So if you have a pattern of working, then you're going to be taken care of down the road. In terms of like a if the economy that you're under is affected by the weather, for example, farming is an example of this. You have to do things proactively. You have to invest in your production and not see that for quite some time, and then you're stockpiling at harvest, to provide all year for yourself, either food or even finances, that sort of thing. All that harvest has to be stockpiled and kind of let out slowly, not all at once, that sort of thing. And so there's a lot of those kind of notions that are here. But a more important thing here is that it's saying, a nap here, a nap there, day off here, day off there. I, last month when I was talking about this, I noted that this was a something I was kind of currently going through. As I was going through a time of being more relaxed, and now a month later, I can tell you that there are some. I can tell you there's some consequences. It is much harder to get back into a pattern of doing things. I'm actually very thankful that this is the way I've been starting my mornings for a month and change now. That I have this pattern in my life, because it's actually forcing me to get up and have done something. And I've added more things to it, and so I'm adding things every day so they become patterns. Not because I want to hustle, but because I need those patterns in order to be not just successful, but just to have a more fulfilled life. So I'm not under the gun, I guess you could say, or not worried about hustling to make it up. I'm trying to even out uh, the way all that works. So, but hey, for those of you that are retired, it's okay. You run the race. It's all good. It's a different story there, but yeah, I think there's probably some still lessons that can be looked at that as far as that goes, as far as like the what the harvest looks like at that point. But we can get into that maybe another day. Um, Always cooking up something nasty. This is verse 12 and beyond. Swindlers and scoundrels talk out of both sides of their mouths. They wink at each other, they shuffle their feet, they cross their fingers behind their backs. Their perverse minds are always cooking up something nasty, always stirring up trouble. Catastrophe is just around the corner for them. A total wreck, their lives ruined beyond repair. Mhm. Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yeah. We're gonna talk about the way of the world a little bit here, in a bit here, out of context of this, but it's reminding me of a lot of that, what we were talking about yesterday and whatnot about, that really it's not about us to judge them or try and correct them necessarily. They their correction will come naturally. That catastrophe is a natural result of the way they are. Yeah. So here we get into that fun part of the of Proverb 6. Here are six things God hates, and one more they loathes with a passion. We're not sure which one is the the one he hates, loathes with a passion for sure. Um, Another way to say this has been, here are six things God hates and seven that he abhors, or something like that. There's other translations that say it different ways. Yeah, it's a very interesting way to do this, but here they are: eyes that are arrogant, a tongue that lies, hands that murder the innocent, a heart that hatches evil plots, feet that race down a wicked track, a mouth that lies under oath, and a troublemaker in the family. Now, it's one of those things where I've always looked at this and said things like, if this is a list, and the way that the sorry, the message translation here is saying is that a troublemaker in the family is the seventh one, and that's what he loves with a passion. That seems incongruent. That is one of those kind of things where it's like this might need some further and go, oh hey, it's not letting me highlight anymore. Oh, there it goes. Need some further research on that one if that is the worst offense, um, or is hate more than loathing with a passion. I don't know. I don't know where that lies, or if that's the right order, or I'm not sure. A lot of things are topsy turvy when it comes to these kind of things. But what we can be sure of is that none of these things are good, and we should not be involved with or have any of these kind of things in our lives. We know that, right? We can take action on that. Uh, and then, of course, this is translated as "good friend," which I think is appropriate enough, but it really is advice to a son. And so, but I think there's some universal wisdom here that we can talk about here. So, warning on adultery, verse 20. Good friend, follow your father's good advice. Don't wander off from your mother's teachings. Wrap yourself in them from head to foot. Wear them like a scarf around your neck. Wherever you walk, they'll guide you. Whenever you rest, they'll guard you. Whenever you wake up, they'll tell you what's next. Sound advice is a beacon. Good teaching is a light. Moral discipline is a life path. They'll protect you from promiscuous women, from the seductive talk of some temptress. Don't lustfully fantasize on her beauty, nor be taken in by her bedroom eyes. You can buy an hour with a prostitute for a loaf of bread, but a promiscuous woman may well eat you alive. It's two different women here, by the way. Can you build a fire in your lap without burning your pants, or and not burn your pants? Can you walk barefoot on hot coals and not get blisters? It's the same when you have sex with your neighbor's wife. Touch her and you'll pay for it. No excuses. Hunger is no excuse for a thief to steal. When he's caught, he has to pay it back, even has if he has to put his whole house into hock. Adultery is a brainless act, soul destroying and self destructive. Expect a bloody nose, a black eye, a reputation ruined for good. For jealousy detonates rage in a cheating husband. Wild for revenge, he won't make allowances. Nothing you say or pay will make it right. Neither bribes nor reason will satisfy him. Yeah, that's a mic drop right there. Um, and for a lot of people, we just well, I think I said this last month, but it bears repeating that a lot of times the thought is, oh well, this doesn't apply to me. Just whatever. Um, but I think there's some things that if we're being completely honest, there's a lot of things that I see a lot of these days, and you can't get onto and I'm not going to ask for forgiveness for this. I think I need to offend someone today. It just needs to happen. Someone needs to be offended into action here. Um, I see this a lot, especially in my area. Um, women that are sharing themselves on social media, especially Instagram and things like that, trying to be as seductive as possible. I even see some women going to church looking like this. It does happen, right? And there's something behind it, obviously, but this is something where we sometimes we'll think that doesn't it's harmless, but there is harm done. And I hate to say it that way, but there is. There's a natural proclivity that a lot of men have that and I'm not exempt from this. I'm a man, and I'm not exempt from this. The eye catches things, and it's drawn to certain things, and it's very difficult. Um, there's a difference between lustful fantasies and that sort of thing, but a lot of that is what I'm seeing is either it's a self-esteem thing or not getting a validation. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's at its core. I'm not the judge of people. That's not my place. But God is. Um, so I would say, there's a danger here of a an engagement further than is actually desired, that needs to be cautioned against here. There's a lot of things that can happen if this goes too far, and it'll eat you alive. Is the in Mother Russia, bread eat you. It's kind of the way I heard this, but it's like it's like um yeah, yeah, that it's a cheap thing that you can fall into if you're not careful, and it has consequences that are far beyond that. And there's this analogy of you build a fire in their lap and not burn your pants. Quite you know bluntly saying, this is something where you will not walk away with this unscathed. And there's no way around this, and there's no excuses for it. You can't say, well, she was coming on to me or whatever, and make that an excuse, or I couldn't resist her or whatever. That's not an excuse. It's not an excuse. And so that's just something for guys. But let me truly make the offense and truly blow your minds here. I think that a lot of this um, comes down to how we are with God. That um, we look after other things. We look for the more quote unquote attractive options. We are promiscuous with that, with our faith, with our attention, especially with our attention. But what we commit to in our lives, what we do, we commit these offenses, and it seems innocent enough. But yeah, I think what I'm going to be talking about here in a bit here to kind of nails this down too is that there's a lot of um, things that come up as far as the way the world works and the way God works, and we are spending more time in the world than with God. And if we're, you know, claiming otherwise, then sometimes we need to have our heads examined. I am never going to be. Well, I should never say never. Um, I don't claim that I spend more time with God than I do in the world. That would be silly. I spend way more time in the world. And ultimately my relationship with God suffers when I spend not just time, but if I'm allowing that to be promiscuous, I guess you could say, and it's whenever it's stealing from him, or stealing from that commitment that I have to God, whether I have, and it can be a lot of these things. It doesn't have to be adultery. It doesn't have to be just like lust and things like that. It can be something as simple as taking the Lord's name in vain, just to be funny. I like being funny, and I've been known from time to time to do that in an attempt to be accepted or funny. Well, that's the same kind of thing. That's the methodology behind it, is that I want to be seen, I want to be heard, I want to be validated. Well, why do I want the world to do that? Why do I want the validation of the world? What good does that do me? When the validation of my creator is so much more powerful. That's kind of what I'm getting at with that. So while the warning of adultery is important for us to recognize in terms of uh, kind of the patterns of the world, that sort of thing. Um, yeah, it's yeah, it's more in to expand that context a bit and say what more is trying to be said here. Is it just warnings against adultery? Is it really that simple, or is there more to that? And so, core concept here being the way the world works and the way that God works are different. In other words, the way of wisdom has a different context than the way of the world. The world likes to take things out of context. Wisdom likes to keep things in context. And so that's actually what I wanted to kind of go over with you. My original intention was to do it the first part of the message today, but mm, didn't work out because I was talking to my camera, and it wasn't actually doing anything. It wasn't recording, wasn't live. It was just on. So let me do this. Let me share with you what I am seeing out there, and this is not easy to work through. There's a lot here that I think is just difficult. Um, so I'll put it that way. Um, what's happening here? There we go. So basically, the Intel CEO um, is under criticism right now because he had posted a proverb on Twitter, on X, and yeah, this is hard because ultimately I understand why. I immediately, when I saw this, I got it right. It was something that was um, actually brought up to me in a different context. I'll bring up in a second here, but um, the context here is that Intel has had to lay off 15% of its workforce, and this is always difficult because we're not promised tomorrow. We're not promised that we'll have a job. We don't. That's something we can necessarily demand in our lives. Um, but that's not always the world's view of that, right? That's not the way that some people in the world see that. They don't see the full context of what wisdom can be, and how to act wisely to make a company survive. Um, and there's some things that I like about what he's done, and some things that I kind of find a little tone deaf here. But but let's dive into it. So basically, what happened is that they've had to lay off 15% of their workforce because of not only just the share prices, but more importantly, um, because of the things that are going on financially. They're just not making what they need to make, financially, so their costs are more than their output as far as that goes. And so they have, you know, the danger here is having people that are just basically sitting idle, and are at an expense to the company. And that can actually, a lot of people don't realize that, in a tech company, that actually can be the difference between you surviving for a year or surviving a week. That level of impact is literally true. So, in fact, let me bring this back to what we were talking about earlier about the ant. Um, the difference here is that when you have actions you're taking that are having a store of that. You have that stored harvest. That can be taken out very quickly by market conditions and things like that. That can be. There's only so far that preparation can even go. So even with acting in wisdom and things like that, there's only so far that it can go. And sometimes you have to make hard decisions, and it's regrettable, but it's in the tech industry. It happens a lot. And so, but the criticism here is that what he posted was Proverb 4, which we would have read on Sunday, actually. And I'm sure it can't be an accident that it was Proverbs 4. I think he was probably, I doubt he was watching this, but probably in the same kind of pattern that a lot of us have been in now of reading a proverb every day and letting that guide your path. And so he read, he quoted Proverb 4, 25 and 26. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Let your gaze fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths of your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. So posted that to Twitter among this, and obviously the world's going to react how the world's going to react. Um, and the things I've seen actually are more critical of just the business actions themselves, which I'll maybe get into in a minute here. But the point there is that the world is seeing this as um, you know, mocking him for praying for people that are being laid off and things like that, which it has happened more than once, by the way. Or resorting to religion to save the company, that sort of thing. This is the way the world sees things, right? And it's not that I have had to make a tough call. We've had to lead in a way that we didn't want to lead, but it is what it is, that sort of thing. Um, my criticisms of Intel's strategy over the last 5 years aside, which I have things I feel about as somebody who works in technology, that doesn't make me right. so so basically, what we're saying here is that there's a history with Pat, the CEO of Intel, and I knew about this. I knew that when he used to work for VMware, he had a organization called Transforming the Bay with Christ, and it's a ministry that I believe is still active. I believe. I don't know that for a fact. I need to do some research on that, but um, it's not that this is out of character for him to be public about his faith and public about how wisdom is guiding him. Um, and so yeah, this is yeah, it's hard to say, like, when is the right time to say this sort of thing, and I don't know if this was the right time for him to be quoting a proverb or not. But what I will say is that there's ways to say this is a hard decision, but we're moving forward because we um, need to do it this way. That we have very strict margins that we work in, um, and you can say these things, but ultimately there's a heart matter here. That's it's saying that you know this is not something I take lightly. That it's not just something that I just say, no, I'm just going to just have all the money and you're not going to have any, which is the way the world is perceiving this right now. Um, it's more just to make the decisions that the business leader sometimes needs to make. And I have to ask myself, if it comes to a business leader being guided by scripture or being guided simply by the books, which would I rather have? And I think I would rather have a CEO or business leadership that's thinking first in terms of like starting their day with scripture. I think I would rather have that than somebody who's starting their day looking at the books. And the results might be the same, and I may feel ways about it, and you know I may get criticism just for saying what I'm saying, honestly, for not aligning myself, because that's what we do in our culture today is we align ourselves one against another, and so right and wrong and sort of thing. It's polar. There's no in betweens. There's no context here. So if I say anything to defend, Pat, then unnaturally evil because Pat made a bunch of jobs not exist anymore, and a bunch of livelihoods are now affected. To which I say what I said earlier today: look to the ant. It is something where we know that things are going to come. If we're not prepared for them, that doesn't mean it's the company's fault. And again, I know I'm going to get hate for that. I know it's going to be something that people are going to say, but that's the way I'm interpreting this. Is that if things happen in the world, that's because things happen in the world. And for us to say that our employer is somehow responsible for our livelihood is a danger, and that is, we shouldn't be thinking that way. I don't see that in scripture. I don't see that we're called to rely on someone else for our livelihood. That's not what it said. It said, look to the ant. Consider that it has no direction. It has no guidance. It finds its sustenance and does so consistently. And so, will this be a challenge for a lot of people? Yes, we're living in a very challenging time, and I don't want to get into that necessarily, but these are not easy things that are being done here. um, One of the things that I do want to call out, though, it's not called out on this, and I need to find. I'll unshare this for a second and see if I can find where that was. Oh yeah, there's the initial post that I had seen, and how it was drawn to my attention was actually my friends at C Suite for Christ had actually brought this up, just to give credit where credit's due. Is that right there? I think you were referencing that same article, basically. Um, but it's it's pretty bad, right? It just is. Um, but at the same time, the criticism has been that you know he has and I don't know if this is actually true. You see on social media certain reactions like, well, lays off 15% of his workforce and then gives himself a $135 million raise or whatever. That's what's been put out there. The notion of should a CEO not be paid and give that money to every one of his employees to keep them active. And so that's the worldly reaction, right? First of all, a CEO doesn't set his own salary. That's just not the way a publicly traded company works. It's just not. Um, Second of all, there's some things that are missed with that kind of thought of, there's not necessarily that's not the way that a business works. Just giving people money to keep them on as staff members might might work for a month. But if there's not product to sell, if product isn't selling, if it isn't actually moving the needle, then you're actually doing more damage than not. Regardless of a a, a $135 million salary for a multi-billion-dollar company. It might make for like a couple of employees to be able to stay on for a while. Yes, but if there's no plan and ahead of that, to correct course or whatever, then it's not going to really make any difference. Something like Intel, their course, when they make adjustments, it takes years to actually see any fruits of it. They can't just pivot and make a new product tomorrow. That's just not the way this works. They might make a new product and might make an adjustment. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are making adjustments right now to their strategy. They've been a little behind, in my opinion, but it's this thing that happens. And so these are the kind of actions that take time. Um, but again, the world likes to take things out of context, and wisdom has things in context. So in context, naturally somebody who is who is thinking about this all the time kind of just has that assumption that people just know that this is the way things work. And there's a danger in that, So, and I'm sure I'm not even explaining it very well. It's not something that I live in on my day to day. But I have I've found ways to educate myself on this so I don't have these immediate reactions. I want to live in wisdom, not in reaction, is the way that works. And so yeah, so it's very interesting to me to have walked in this path of reading Proverbs every day and that sort of thing, and really gaining that temperance, I guess you could say, of saying, let's give this a moment of thought, that sort of thing. Um, Now, to the core question, should he have shared the a proverb on Twitter in context of all this? I don't know. Honestly, I'm not sure. I will open that up to discussion, I suppose, but ultimately, I grieve with Scripture the same way I agree with my other words. So I think I probably would have done something similar, if not the same. I probably would have done that. Um, the world is going to react the way the world's going to react. Um, there's no words that he could have possibly said in any stretch. You know, he could give up all of his salary, and it wouldn't make any difference. It wouldn't move the needle forward. People would not see that. They wouldn't. It might be noble, but nobility is not what's necessary for a company to survive. So and I'm not going to go into whether or not he should. I don't know what he does with his money. I have no clue. It's not my business to know what he does with his salary. And it's not my business to determine whether it's deserved or not. That's not the way this works for me. um I'm not on that board. I'm not even aware that I have all that much exposure to their stock, to be honest with you. I probably do, but it's not something I'm directly aware of. It's probably just in groups of other stocks, and whatever those are called. Not bonds. Mutual funds. There you go. Brain's working. So honestly, I think that's kind of things that I don't necessarily have the context and the skin in the game, I guess you could say, to really be all that critical. But people without skin in the game are critical all the time because the world takes things out of context, and wisdom keeps things in context. I've gone on for way longer than I wanted to today, but this is something I wanted to kind of bring up and kind of experiment with a little bit of having a worldly thing that happened, just because it resonated with me as obviously what I'm doing here, and you know so we'll have to just track this one and see what happens with it. But ultimately, for all of us, there's these words of wisdom that we need to take every day, and not be fooled by these patterns of the world. We don't want to be caught up in these thoughts about what if, what if, what if. Consider the ant. Consider the ant. It stays the course. It doesn't become distracted. It doesn't follow adulterous paths. It doesn't look after lusting after what it thinks is right. It does its work every day. It prepares for the future. That's the word for me today. That's not to be distracted by all this or be concerned with it. Being aware is one thing. Having a wisdom about it is one thing, but being distracted by it, I've already probably eaten into a half hour of my day that I probably should uh, make up for. But it's all good, right? So, anyway, I hope this is a blessing to you, and I hope this actually helped someone today. I hope it doesn't have too much blowback from me saying these things, but at the same time, I think they needed to be said. So, there we go. All right. Well, I'll see you tomorrow for Proverbs 7. Same bat time, same bat channel. I don't know if anybody's old enough to get that reference, but yeah, maybe some of us are. Awesome stuff. Well, I love you guys, and in the meantime, be blessed by the best, and be a blessing to all the rest. Have a great day, everybody.